All right, thanks everyone. Thanks for coming to SAS Innovate, and hope you all have a good session so far. And also thanks to my session. Today I'm going to talk about expanding MFA across the SAS line ecosystems, unified security for every entry point. So real brief about myself. So my name is Ziyong Li. I go by Z. I've been working at SAS for over 25 years. Yes, it's a long time. I still love it. Currently, I'm a senior manager at SAS Line Division. And so SAS Line Division is basically dedicated to support our SAS Line customers. So folks like you, really appreciate that you are using SAS and coming to the session as well. So my responsibility is for the SAS Line middle tier platform. So the middle tier platform is a very rich set of services we provide to bring the SAS analytical capability to the internet. And then all of our solutions, probably hundreds of them, built on top of this platform. Right. One of the main functionality of this platform is to provide authentication, security integration with enterprise security system, and of course, multi-factor authentication is the one thing we also support. So that's myself. And this is what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to start with what is MFA, why it matters. And I'm going to talk about what we're supporting today. Right? SAS Line start from 9.4 M9, we do have MFA support. But the main thing is I'm going to talk about is we're going to adding additional capabilities, additional functions to what we have done for SAS 9.4 M9. And we're going to cover a lot of different entry points. With all this additional capability, we want to make sure they have a consistent architecture. Right? So we're going to talk about unified MFA architecture for the upcoming release. And two of the main sort of tiers for MFA support is in the middle tier and also in the server tier. Right? So we want to talk about how these two tiers work together, how they align with each other. And also very important is, yes, we can provide capability. We also want to make folks deploying config MFA's life easier. So we're going to talk about how you can use our easy button to deploy the MFA in your environment. In conclusion, I'll summarize what is the main benefit of our upcoming MFA capabilities. And also, what is the key takeaway, hopefully you can take with you. If you cannot remember all the details I'm talking about, hopefully you can at least remember these three key takeaways you can take back with you, and hopefully that will be helpful in your SAS line deployment or management. I'll make sure I leave some time at the very end for you to answer any questions, which I may be able to help to answer. Okay, so what is MFA and why it matters? Most of you probably know, right? Today, you log into your bank account, you've been asking username and password, and you get a text message on your phone, you get a code, you enter. That's first fact is username and password. Second fact, your code. Right? So this is much more secure approach than just simply username and password. And the other thing we observe is this is becoming not an optional thing. This is mostly like integrated with your enterprise identity or access management platforms. So it's not like isolated to your applications or other applications. Most likely, it's going to be integrated with your IT organization's infrastructure. And also, used to be, you can get away with just have a first factor authentication, but increasingly, a lot of a company will require, or IT organization will require you to use second factor authentication. It's becoming much pervasive for commercial software, especially in enterprise organizations. And security is really important. We all agree with that, right? Becoming more and more important. But as we provide the software for our customer to use, we always keep the usability in mind. We always want to provide something easy for you to use. So that's the important thing for me, for us, to provide this capability, which I will talk about in my presentation, how we provide easy to use and consistent MFA across, it's pretty complicated or sophisticated SAS 9 application stacks. So let's start with talking about what is the current state of MFA at SAS 9. And currently, our MFA support is mainly in the middle tier, right? All the middle tier web application you're using the SAS 9 for M9, SAS 9 for M9 will have MFA support. You can enable it. We do have support for a few selected Java desktop applications. For example, Forecast Server. You can use MFA with Forecast Server. And most of these are interactive UI-based applications or application flows, authentication flows. We do provide two different types of authenticator. One is called the Google Authenticator, it's SAS. Another one is called the SAS Authenticator. However, one of the main important things to remember in that current implementation, all of this Google Authenticator, SAS Authenticator, actually implemented in the SAS middle tier, right? So I'll talk about why that's important later. And what this means is MFA for SAS 9 for M9 is focused on web applications. It's largely optional for other application types. So we get some inconsistency across our platforms or across our applications. And that's more specifically about these limitations. MFA is limited to the middle tier. Even in the middle tier, if you're familiar, we have several different access points, right? You can access through the REST endpoint in SAS Logon Manager. We also have BI web services, which support REST and also SOAP. And we also don't have the support for MFA for the SAS server tier. And for if you're using batch or programmatic access, our current support is pretty limited. There's some support to that, that's pretty limited. So we have all of these limitations. So in summary, there's a gap exists outside of interactive UI usage. So that's what we want to expand, right? We want to support in the middle tier, we want to support web access. If you know a little bit more detail, it's sometimes we call SAS Logon/login, that's the entry point. Or the REST access point, like SAS Logon/v1/tickets. And web services, I mentioned REST and SOAP. And also, some folks may be configure container manager security. We want to make sure that has MFA protected as well. And that's in the middle tier. On server tier, we are going to enforce MFA for over 15 SAS or more SAS servers. And that includes something you probably heard, you're probably familiar, like workspace server, object spawner, stored process server, metadata server. All this authentication point will be protected. And one other thing that's also very important to point out is at upcoming release, we're going to have MFA enabled with enterprise MFA providers, such as Duo and Okta. Okay, like what I mentioned, yes, adding functions, adding capabilities is always good, welcome. But on the other hand, we want to make sure we got a consistent experience. We have a good usability, right? These are several key design points, basically, how we want to make sure we have a unified MFA experience for across the SAS 9 systems. So we're going to use something called a push MFA as the standard model. And we're going to use same MFA providers for all these different entry points or different tiers. I will centralize the policy configuration. We're going to provide consistent timeout behavior, and our goal is one MFA experience, regardless of what entry point you access. Like I mentioned, we also want to make sure it's easy to config. So we're going to provide this using SAS deployment wizard. Most of you are probably familiar, right? That's the main kind of a utility for SAS 9 to do your install and config. So we're going to add capabilities into that SAS deployment wizard or SDW to allow you to config, deploy multi-factor authentication. So let's talk about what is a push MFA. Let's say our SAS 9 for M9, let's call that traditional MFA. The main difference is one is code-based. Like in M9, line for M9, you're going to be required to get a code either through an email, through a text messaging, or maybe you are on your authentication app. Right? That authentication app could be Google, could be Microsoft, could be from any of the vendors. They are standardized that kind of a approach. But for this push MFA, you're not getting a code. You're still going to use the app. You'll get a request to your app. I'll show you a screenshot later. Basically, you can approve or deny. Okay? So why we're going this route? And one of the main reasons is, this is maybe a challenge, not just for SAS. I think it's in general. When you have a large number of customers using interactive mode to access your system, you're writing SAS code, you submit your SAS code. You're using Connect, SAS Connect to, doing the connection to SAS. And all of the other are programmatic. You are using BIWS, web service. And customers write their own application, access those API. Those are internally programmatic access. And if you want them to provide a GUI to do MFA, that's pretty kind of intrusive change for that, right? So this push MFA is very naturally fit into that programmatic model. Your code is the same, right? The difference is now, in order to run your code in certain situations, I'll talk about that later as well, you now need to use your phone to approve that execution to continue. Right, so that's why the push fits so well with these paradigms. So like I mentioned, we support two providers, Duo and Okta. Right, so that's a high level. Let's drill down into some of the details. I think it's going to be very interesting, very exciting to see some of what's actually happening behind the scenes when we talk about how MFA actually worked. So this is, again, it's a little bit high level. We'll get into a little bit more detail in the next slide. And you can think of in a high level, you get three zones: user, middle tier, and enterprise MFA. User, you may have a browser, you may have a desktop application, and you have your device, right? You may have a phone, registered device. And in the middle tier, you have SAS Logon Manager, and SAS Logon Manager is going to talk to the enterprise MFA provider. It's going to manage this authentication token. It's going to talk to the metadata server to do first factor authentication, and then it's going to be receive the response from multi-second factor authentication and allow the user to log in. So the right-hand side is basically enterprise MFA servers your IT organization may manage, may already have it. So this one is a little bit easier. So I'm trying to explain it, but you can look at it closer after the conference or after the meeting. And if you have questions, I'm going to be in the booth for tomorrow, so you're welcome to come to SAS 9 booth. So basically what's going to happen is you are access a SAS application. You're using browser. For example, you access SAS Visual Analytics, right? You request that SAS web application, and that will be redirected back to your browser with a logon page. You input your username, password, you submit that, and to the SAS Logon Manager. SAS Logon Manager is going to talk to the SAS metadata server to retrieve user identity and MFA policy. Right? Basically, MFA policy is to say, is this user need to do MFA? right? If they do need to do MFA, they got into this box, and it's going to issue that MFA request to your MFA server providers, Duo or Okta. And the Duo Okta is going to talk to your device to say approve or deny. When that deny or approve is crossed over, send it back to your Duo Okta server, and that will be sort of either, let's assume it's successful, and MFA success message will back to the Logon Manager, and the Logon Manager will issue a CAS authentication token. CAS is a central authentication service. It's a third-party, very popular third-party product we use in the SAS Logon Manager to actually manage that authentication token. So the authentication token is going to be used, send it back together to your browser, and the browser then redirect that request that eventually get into your destination. Okay, so that's the flow. This middle part, I put another solid line over there. It's optional. If you don't do MFA, that's the same flow you're getting when you do the authentication. Okay. All right, that's the middle tier. Now let's move on to the server tier. And server tier, like what I mentioned, is completely new, right? So we introduced a new SAS MFA server. And this server is going to centralize second factor authentication. So all of other servers, I mentioned workspace server, stored process server, they're all going to dedicate that second factor authentication to this new SAS MFA server. And this new SAS MFA server itself is integrated with Duo and Okta server to actually do the second factor authentication. The key design goal is we want to decouple this MFA logic. We don't want every server now have to be responsible to do second factor authentication. Right? They're going to dedicate to SAS MFA server. So this is a diagram show you exactly what happened. Right, so you are on the client side, that's the number one. And for example, you have an EG, enterprise guide, right? So you are going to submit a stored process. You run that stored process, and that stored process is going to be running on this server, SAS server, say, all the service layer. And it could be running on the stored process server, could run on the workspace server, right? Either one of them, the first factor authentication will happening depending on what server you access. And it may talk to the manager server to do authentication, may talk to your OS to do authentication, that's the first fact. After that's done, it's going to call this MFA server to say, can you do the second factor authentication for me? Right, so the MFA server is going to talk to the manager server to retrieve the configuration information, bypass policy, the integration with the SAS middle tier. Right, you see that in the previous picture when I talk about middle tier authentication, is talk to the managed server. And this MFA server also talk to the managed server. So that's one location we have all the policy, all the configuration information stored. And the MFA server is going to check a bunch of conditions, which I'll talk about a little bit more later, what condition is checked. It decided needs to do MFA, if that's the decision, and it's going to use authentication API to talk to either Cisco, Duo, or Okta, depending on what MFA provider you config. And again, it's going to, Okta and Duo is to talk to your device to ask for approval. So that's how you sort of flow together. And what's the beauty of this is really, for EG, you may even not need to make any changes. You may not even see any difference, other than now you have to bring up your phone to say, I'm going to approve, before EG can actually proceed. You log into EG can proceed. Okay? So that's middle tier, server tier. Once you understand it, it's kind of a fairly easy, you can put them together. But we do want to make sure when we put them together, we want to make sure they are providing a kind of a consistent usage of or consistent MFA flow, right? So these are several important points. If you log into SAS, we want you to only approve or delete once. So one MFA, right? Either you middle tier, server tier, you should only do once. We want to share the MFA providers. I already mentioned that. We're going to share those bypass policy. Also, there's this timeout management. And we want to make sure they are consistent as well. So there's for example, we're going to use the same default timeout, same value. And timeout can be extended if the user actually uses the system, either from middle tier or from server tier. However, we do allow you to configure the timeout differently for different tier, middle tier and server tier. We do realize some customers may have special usage. They want to have timeout longer, shorter, whatever. Right? So we give you that options. One of the design goals is really prevent double or triple MFA approval requests, right? We know, you want security, you want a second factor authentication, but I will also know if I'm going to challenge you 10 times, and you're going to really annoy. You're like, do I really? Right? So we want to make sure that we don't have too many interruptions to whatever you're doing for your daily life, daily work. Okay, so we talk about the alignment. There are also differences as well, right? So these are very important too. In the middle tier, we call that MFA management is authentication token based, right? I talk about token, I talk about CAS token. And this is really tied into our current existing SAS Logon flow, right? The current Logon Manager already manages the authentication token using CAS to manage that authentication token. What we're doing on top of that is MFA is going to be also tied with that authentication token. What that also means is if you log in from one browser or from one machine, you need to do MFA. If you go to another machine, same you log in again, or you're on the same machine, you have a different browser session. Of course, different browser session mean differently for different type of browsers, so I'm not getting into details. Just keep it in mind. If it's a complete different new session, then you will need to do an MFA again. That's what we call authentication token-based. I will explain that a little bit more. I know this token session sometimes pretty confusing. Okay, on the server tier, it's actually very different. We call it user-based enforcement. What that means is we don't have MFA tied with where you come from, right? If you log into the server tier directly, you say you use the SAS Connect, right? So you need to do authenticate. You need to log in. But if you go to another machine, you use this as the same user. Like say you use EG, and you don't need to do multi-factor authentication. If you use EG to access server tier servers, like stored process server or workspace server, you don't have to log in again. So you only need to log in once if you are the same user. So that's also we called MFA compliance, which I'll talk about in a second. Yes, there are differences between middle tier and the server tier, and we try to align them really well, and we try to provide a consistent way how you can use it. So that's kind of a summarize what the middle tier MFA behavior is, right? We're going to do a single MFA sign-on across multiple applications. So this is what I'm trying to say. It's a little bit of clarification, like we have authentication token. You really also will have a single sign-on. What that means is you really can use multiple SaaS web application by only logging once. You only also need to do MFA once, right? That authentication token is actually sort of a aggregated multiple your applications HTTP session, right? So if that's a little bit too technical, just keep it in mind. That's how kind of authentication. It's not one application, it's multiple SaaS application. But when you go to a different browser session, that's a different story. You even access same SaaS web application, that's a different sort of authentication has to happen, right? So you have a different authentication token. So the point is, you have single MFA sign-on across web applications. MFA required when you first time log in, if your token expired, if you log in from a new browser or from a different machine, same user, you need to do a multi-factor authentication. Even if you already log in to SaaS web application, now you're going to use programmatically access like REST endpoint, or you access web services. You still need to do a lot of multi-factor authentication, right? They normally make sense because each of these kind of requests from different perspective, different paths to go to middle tier have a different authentication token associated with it, right? That's why everything is tied with this authentication token. And the timeout, token timeout is configurable sliding. So every time you use it, the token will be extended. The timeout for that token is going to be extended. That's the middle tier. For the server tier MFA, it's really single MFA from different logins. So even you go to multiple places, you're going to need to do MFA once. Server will check quite a few conditions, like whether you have a valid token and whether you already log in from somewhere, either middle tier and server tier. I will talk about this a little bit more in the next slides. We call the compliance check. So this maybe give you a better view, understanding what that really means. Basically, when you come into the SaaS MFA server, you say, do I need to do MFA? It's going to check, are you using SaaS one-time password? Are you directly coming from SaaS middle tier? Are you in the policy, you don't have to do MFA? So are you already logged into the middle tier? And you're already compliant with the time span, right? So all of this condition will be checked to say, okay, you don't have to do MFA. One of the main reasons, again, is we don't want to do multiple MFAs, right? We can easily say, oh yeah, you come in and we don't check this, you just do a lot of MFA. But that's very kind of unfriendly for users. So that's why we spend a lot of time trying to make this right and to reduce the amount of MFA you have to do. Yeah, if you're not compliant, then we'll do a MFA. We'll have an MFA request for you. And once you approve or deny, your time will be reset. Remember, we have a sliding window, right? Your time will be reset. Okay, talk a little bit about this bypass policy. Basically, we support two types of, basically we're using something called user in group. So if you are a user in a certain groups, you don't have to do MFA, right? We do that for two purposes. One is for our internal usage, and we call that SaaS reserved system account. The reason is SaaS is a pretty complicated system. There's a lot of interactions, a lot of service account. Used to talk with each other, different services, and used to talk from middle tier, server tier. All of this service account, there's no real kind of a physical user associated with it, right? You don't want them to, have to do the MFA, right? So those user accounts are going to be in a special group, and it's going to be add that group as part of our configuration, right? Our easy button. So you don't get those kind of MFAs request. And a lot is custom manager bypass group. Those basically give to the customer, and if you need to have some batch job, those users don't do the MFA. You add to those group. Okay. So I pretty much cover all the major functions. Now kind of an easy part, configuration. right? So I mentioned we have an easy button to do that. You do need to configure the middle tier, server tier, and you do need to do a configuration to the managed server, simple thing to do. You do need to configure users in MFA server, Duo or Okta, right? So again, I'm going to mention, we're going to use SDW to do that, right? I'll show you some screen. It should be make it very clear. You can see that. So this is the first screen, SDW, right? So there's really, remember, 3 configurations: SDW, managed server, your enterprise MFA provider server, right? So this is SDW screen. Basically asks you, do you want to do MFA? You say yes. Do you want to use Duo or Okta? Yes. This one is basically say, where is your server located? Host name and port number. Reason is, remember, if you do deployment, SaaS can be deployed in multiple machines, right? So we need to know where your server, MFA server is installed. So the next question is, do you want to use Duo or Okta, right? So your IT will give you all the specific connection informations, right? So you type that in, and that's it. Basically, you run the SDW, everything's going to config. Now, in order to use that user or any user to log into MFA, you do need to do some configuration. This is coming to the SMC. Basically, SMC, you need to add phone number, you need to create an account, you need to add a phone number and email. That's all, right? So in this case, I say, I'm going to create a new user. I'm going to say MFA test 10, and I have a phone number I will type in, and I'll come over here to create an account. Most of you are probably familiar with this, right? So you create an account, and then pretty much done. That's all you need to do for the MFA users. And this is basically go to add user to your Google, Duo or Okta server. So your IT admin, system admin will go there to add user. For example, in this case, as demo@saasinnovate.com. Right, that user will get an email to say, okay, you are added to the account, go register yourself. So click that email account, click that link from the email. Let's go to this screen. You got a couple options to register. I'm going to show you 2. One is using the mobile app, another uses the phone. Okay, so you can go in. You're going to say, okay, this is user phone. You're going to type your phone number. You basically continue. You approve. You agree with the term, and you continue. Then you're done. This is the QR code, right? You're going to get a QR code. You use your phone, scan that QR code, and you can register yourself. So it's fairly straightforward. Next thing I'm going to show you is now you're going to use it, right? Everything's configured. You're happy. And MFA test 7 already registered. You see the same. Let's say you type in Visual Analytics. You get redirected to this logon screen. Your same thing you do with username and password. The next screen is going to say, it's going to remind you basically, say, well, please look at your phone, approve or deny. And if you didn't do it quick enough, timeout, you do have an option to send me another request. Okay. All right. So this is how the Duo app looks like. City picture probably, and then this one is basically deny or approve. Right. So very simple on your screen. You're going to see that. Yeah. Okay. So so that's how you're going to config and how you're going to use it. And I pretty much done with all the features and how you're going to use it, how you're going to configure it. Now let's kind of summarize. This table shows kind of evolution from SAS 9.m9 to upcoming SAS 9.m10. Right? There's several things I want to highlight. The first one is SAS 9.4m9 MFA is SAS managed. It's a standalone authenticators, right? So everything is in SAS. You can use your phone, but it's not like have a user have a real kind of a server is inside of a SAS, not like you're going to be in other third-party place, right? But in M10, the upcoming release, we're going to use enterprise MFA providers, which is still an Okta, right? And SAS 9 is code-based. And SAS 10 is push-based, right? So you're getting more of easy use of programmatic access MFA enforcement, but when using the push-based MFA. And yeah, last thing is configuration. So we're going to use SAS-specific configuration, and it's all inside SAS 9 for M9. SAS is all inside SAS for M9. So it's going to be SAS-specific configuration. But for M10, the MFA needs to be configured in SAS, also needs in your MFA providers, right? So you want to make sure all these account names and email, phone number align with each other. So what this means for SAS customers, and MFA protection will be for all access point, all access paths, not just for UI applications, right? It's going to be single, consistent MFA experience across clients and all the tiers, and alignment with enterprise identity and security strategies, right? Most of the large, or at least large organization may already have that dual Okta. And we're going to minimize the security gap. And also the middle tier MFA, using the SAS deployment will be enhanced to use third-party identity providers, right? So we're not just using everything in-house, we're using the third-party MFA providers. So the key takeaway is for M10 or upcoming release, MFA is going to be everywhere. Every entry point is protected. We're going to provide a unified experience, same providers, same policy, and align the behavior. And it's going to be enterprise ready, so the MFA will align with your company's IT security providers. And there's some slides I will not emphasize too much. These are mainly for M9, right? So, but we're going to have a similar documentation or more documentation for M10 when that gets released. That's pretty much all for me, and thanks again for coming to my session. Thanks again.
We have time for a couple questions.
We have a requirement to enable MFA for SAS ADM in the internal account. Is that possible, or does it have to be excluded?
Unfortunately, it has to be excluded. We did have a lot of debate on that. Boy, I'm still hoping maybe we can pull a miracle. We don't have to. Our recommendation is you can create a similar account as SAS ADM, okay, right? Just not config out of box. But you can very easily create a similar one as a SAS administrator. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a little bit. I don't personally really like it, to be honest with you, but there's a lot of internal core using SAS ADM,
right?
We just cannot. At least we have not been able to get around it.
Right. Thank you.
Sure, very good question. Yes.
Anyhow, users doesn't have access to the accounts, right?
Which account?
SAS ADM accounts. Yeah. Only administrators can handle those accounts, right?
Yes, but
only people, those who are administration, those people know SAS ADM, SAS SRV accounts, those accounts, right? I don't think it is necessary, but if you want, we can create it.
Oh yeah, you can create one. Yeah, absolutely agree. Yeah, it is. It's admin usage. I know some people using it. They maybe were thinking, I do want that user also doing MFA, but I agree. Yeah, yeah. But there's a way around it. It's not too terrible to work around it. So.
You mentioned it's on M9 and M10. What about older versions like M7?
Oh, M7, no, we're not going to go back to M7 to support MFA, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then will this, you mentioned customer managed bypass groups for batch jobs. Would that also include service accounts? Does it
Any account, basically, right? It's a capability we provide. It can be a service account, to answer your question. If you have a service account, some sort, you can add that user to that group, then you'll get bypassed. Because it's really your choice, right? You kind of looking your security policy, what a user you impacted, just interrupted their work, right? So that user needs to be added into a bypass list. Of course, you have to think about, okay, you added a group, that means that user don't do MFA, that comply with your policy or security policy or not.
Right, but a service account wouldn't have a person on the other end to push the button. It's running.
Well, it's your service account. You're talking about your service account, right? Not SAS service account. Which service account are you talking about?
Non-human ID.
Like for what? For doing?
Production jobs.
Service accounts, users, they will create a service account to run multiple jobs, right?
Oh yeah. If you are, batch job, multiple account, yes, you can use that. Yeah. Well, what do you think about? Like say you write a web application, your application, you call web services, right? You may use a system account to call that service endpoint. Yeah, you do want to add that service account into the bypass list. Yes.
One last question.
Has there been any testing or any caveats with going from like REL 8, 9, 10, anything with MFA? Are there any differences or caveats when we're upgrading to that?
That's a very good question. I didn't touch that. So most of the discussion, my presentation focused on out-of-box behavior, right? If you're talking about UIP, let's say you want to migrate. Well, let me actually clarify. Migrate UIP means you are from M7, MA to M10, M9 to M10. But you're talking about operation system.
Yes, operation systems, and we don't do UIP. I'm talking getting a new box and.
No, that should not impact. Our implementation not really depend on the operation system at all.
Okay.
Yeah, it's completely outside of that. Only thing we kind of interact with operation system is if you run the workspace server, if you do use that.
Yes.
You know the user has to be added into OS account,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
If your RHEL upgrade from Red Hat 8 to Red Hat 9 can maintain that relationship, then you'll be fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Worst the case, you have to recreate it again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll find
Sure.
you in the hub if I have more questions.
Absolutely, yes.
All right. Thank you, Steve.
Okay, thanks everyone. Appreciate it.